I bought the Denali SoundBomb Mini for my Suzuki V-Strom 800DE, mainly because the full-size SoundBomb is too loud for my liking, but also because the Mini is completely plug and play, so I figured install would be easy. That turned out to be wishful thinking though, so in this video I'll show you the problems I had installing the thing, and ultimately how I got around them. Now the first thing you need to do on this bike is to remove the front side fairing. That is a whole other job in itself, so I've made a separate video showing you how to do that, which I'll link at the top corner of the video and in the video description below. 95% of that job is actually really straightforward and just involves undoing a few screws and push rivets. But actually removing the fairing panel itself once the fixings were out took me a good 20 minutes of wrestling. All you really need to know though is that you need to push the panel forward at the right angle to remove these two latches. But you'll need to watch that other video for the full process, or there's a written guide online which is what I followed, and I'll link that in the description as well. In the box with the SoundBomb Mini then, you get 2 extension plates with a couple of bolts, the horn itself and an instruction manual. To install it you'll first need to remove the stock horn of course, and you'll need a 10mm spanner to do so. Mine wasn't on very tight, so it came off with minimal encouragement. But that was the end of Easy Street. I wanted the SoundBomb install to be as neat as possible, so I first tried fitting it direct to the stock bracket. Now you have to install the SoundBomb pointing downwards so it doesn't fill with water, but otherwise there are no restrictions. However, it wouldn't quite go, so I moved on to plan B, which was to remove the stock bracket completely, and it looked like it would fit if I moved the sticky up bit on the stock bracket. But it turns out that thing is an immovable object, so I gave up and went for plan C. Plan C was to fix the horn to the stock mounting point with the extension mounts that came with the horn. And while this looked good at first glance, I found out 5 minutes later that the front fork needed more clearance at full lock, so plan C was out of the window too. Before I moved on to plan D though, I came across another problem. It turns out the cables from the stock horn have pretty much no give in them, and so they wouldn't stretch to the new placement, which was no more than 2 inches away from the stock horn. Now the Denali instructions say the connectors can go on either way round, but that didn't help and the cables simply don't stretch far enough. Now at this point what I probably should have done is take off the fuel tank to see if the cables really were already at full stretch, or if I could pull them through a little bit more. But instead of doing that I decided to just buy some extension cables. Although I couldn't find anything that would fit, so I went to my local branch of Halfords instead and picked up a couple of spade connectors and some electrical cable to DIY an extension lead myself. Now I don't mind taking the risk for an electrical install like this myself, but I'm not going to show you how I did it because I have literally no idea what I'm doing when it comes to this sort of thing, and I don't want to encourage anyone to copy me. But with the extenders made, I then went back to look for plan D in terms of a mounting location. And this time I completely removed the stock mounting bracket to free up some space, attached the horn to the extension mounts, then mounted the extenders to this little sticky up bit above the radiator. I checked the clearance against the front fork, which didn't quite clear, so I slid the extension mounts back a smidgen, then tightened the bolts in their final place. I then did another clearance check with the front fork, then a quick clearance check with the side fairing panel, and finally all was well. My extension cables slotted into the stock fitting pretty easily, and if anything I'd actually made them slightly too long, so I added a couple of cable ties to neaten it up a bit. Now there were a couple more things to do before I put the fairing back on, the first of which was to test the horn worked, which it did. It's much louder and less pathetic than the stock horn, but if I'm completely honest it does still sound a bit cartoon clown. But anyway, here's the comparison between the old and the new. Now back to the install, and my extension cables looked a bit exposed, so I bought some liquid electrical tape off eBay to cover them up a little better. I ordered black stuff, but they sent it in white, and because it took several weeks for the stuff to arrive, I just decided to make do. And because of the delivery delay time, by this point I'd put the fairing panel back on, which made applying this stuff really awkward, and I think it's safe to say that I didn't exactly do a neat job of this. However, I did manage to cover the main exposed metal parts, and that's all that really matters. Now all of the footage you've seen so far was recorded in June 2024, but given I did such a bodge job of this, I left it until December 2024 before finishing this video off, so I could report back on any problems. And I'm pleased to say that there have been none. I've got the bike wet plenty of times in the last 6 months, and I've washed it a few times with a pressure washer. I've been riding out in heavy rain, and I even took the bike through a water crossing on a green laning day I did. And I'm pleased to report that the horn still works fine 6 months later, and it hasn't even caught fire yet. In fact, it looks the same now as it did on day 1, so I'm pretty confident it'll be okay. Now, the kind of person who installs an aftermarket horn is probably also the kind of person who would install auxiliary lights, so you can watch my install of Oxford auxiliary lights next, after clicking the like and subscribe buttons, of course. And if you've got any questions, let me know in the comment section below. And until next time, ride safe.